I'm Shelvin and welcome to RBC Podcast Property Space. And today we are very, very honored again to have Matt visiting KL. You really love KL.
I'm here a lot, aren't I? I know.
It's like half Malaysian. I should ask the government to issue you a Malaysian passport for free without buying property here. But okay, so joke aside, I think we would just want to grab you for another half an hour in this podcast to share some of your personal insights, which is quite valuable to our viewers and an audience, especially when it comes to overseas investment landscape. So another Q&A. It feels like an interview, but
sure.
Don't worry, just a dialogue, okay? So question one, Matthew, we have been getting continuous inquiries from clients on where the kids should stay in London and where are the good places to invest in London. So can you share with us your personal views?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's good that you're getting continuous inquiries from clients. That's a positive sign.
Very positive.
That's very good. I think it's natural that people will want to gravitate, obviously, close to the university that their son or daughter is going to. There are certain places, in London where there's lots of student accommodation blocks.
Yes.
And I guess it's those sort of places because I think if you imagine yourself as an 18 or 19-year-old, it was a long time ago for me, not so long ago for you.
No, it was very long. Can't even feel it.
You want to be around your peers, I suppose.
Exactly.
And generally, people will go and live in a student accommodation block for their first year of university, and then for years 2 and 3, they'll have to sort of rent privately or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess they're all in a sort of similar area. It really does depend on where you're going. We've mentioned before about Wembley because that has got an area of lots of student accommodation blocks, and your commute to various universities is pretty short. You're around other people of similar ages, other international students.
Support,
absolutely. We are at the moment noticing an increase in some of our central London developments. Because actually, whatever university you're going to, you're very close proximity. So, for example, we have a development in Aldgate, which is actually sits within what we call the City of London. And when we say that, we don't just mean the whole of London. We mean a very sort of small, square mile, which is our main CBD. So where the famous sort of cluster of skyscrapers that we have is, that's the City of London. So our financial district. So we have a development there. And obviously, because it is so central, you can be going to a variety of universities, and actually, you're within easy distance.
I think essentially we are looking at London as a commuter city. Yes, the city itself is huge. It has a lot of. I don't even know what is the kilometer in terms of the size. I lost count. But the good thing about London is that it has the oldest but the most comprehensive transit system. So irregardless which university your kids are going to study or they graduated from, everywhere is well connected in the sense that you get all sort of transportation system, including underground, the overground. We have Thameslink, Crossrail, which is the Elizabeth line. We have DRR. I may have lost some of it, but essentially we're looking at about at least 5 kinds of transportation services that can take you in and around the London city easily, seamlessly. So it really depends on where you want to go from and to. And people will always think that, I must get into London city. How far from London city? But which point of London city?
Well, I know that in KL, people drive everywhere.
Yes.
Hence why the traffic is so bad.
It's
the traffic is also bad in London, but it's getting on the train or the tube as we call it is very common.
Very common.
That's a normal thing to do to get to work, and it's often quicker.
Yes, definitely. I can testify this. I can testify because I did try driving into KL city from Kapong because I live in Kapong. Oh, good God, it was about an hour with traffic, but with really bad traffic, 2 hours. But I took the MRT and just give it a test run on another day. I think it was, half an hour. It was half of the time. where you spend your time in the car listening to some crappy music. So guys, I think Malaysians would have to really learn how to embrace public transports. So let's not take it as an education on public transport, but I think essentially what you have been hearing from, even for us, having hearing from Malaysian parents who are intending to send their kids to study in the UK, we will always advise them to look into areas that is all within walking distance to public transports. And some of the Malaysians will have a specific preference that the station has to be serviced by tube, which is the underground. I would like to address this and also make a correction on this. Not necessarily. As long as you're close to any kinds of train services, all these trains will be able to take you into London in any station where you can do an interchange. You can start from overground and then you can stop at maybe say King Cross or Paddington. Then you can swap it to tube services. So that's as how fluid it is when it comes to London public transport. So in London itself, like say just now your recommendation is areas within public transport, and then what are the other characteristics that you want to cover on as well?
Well, I think location is obviously important, and being able to get to the university or workplace that they need to get to also. But I guess when you're a parent overseas and you're sending your little angels to another country on the other side of the world, you want to know they're safe and happy. So
safety, yes.
There is certainly particularly sort of international buyers will gravitate more towards the new builds with concierges and gyms on site and facilities.
Yes.
So that's very common as well. You might find that a British family would be happy for something older, maybe like a house share, and they share with their friends. But certainly the international market, they're interested in maybe studios, 1 beds, 2 beds.
Yeah.
2 beds are popular actually because although you might have one child living in it, it means you can visit and you have a place to stay. So 2 beds are quite popular.
Good point. But I do agree to what Matthew shared in regards to safety. I think Malaysian parents have this priority when it comes to safety because little princess and little prince are going to study in London, and because they are going to be there and you have to manage them remotely in that sense. You are not going to be there with them throughout throughout the entire study period. So we always recommend clients to look into areas or developments that has got 24 hours concierge, like what you mentioned, because it does have that sort of amenities that would take care of your safety. They have CCTV surveillance. And then when it comes to even for picked up services or courier services, your parcels, parcel has become a very popular topic, especially during and after COVID, where people were required to stay in a development with concierge so they can keep the parcel. So that has got one of the hottest demand when it comes to rental or even for self-use criteria. And then thirdly is that you also need to ensure that we always talk about proximity to the station, but you also need to understand from one station back home, the walk path itself has to be safe, because you don't know when your kids are walking alone. Let's say they have got night classes, they finish at 10 p.m., take the last train back to where they stay. You can't be sure that it's going to be safe for them to walk back home alone. So if you're into this kind of distance between, say, 5 to 10 minutes walk from the station, that is a good consideration and good gauge for you to understand you are in the right spot, buying to the right property. If it's beyond 10 minutes walk or even 15 minutes walk, then it is not as conducive. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not as conducive, especially you have a girl.
Sure. Let me add another point as well. Convenience is definitely, important, but when you're buying a property, there's definitely a much more longer term view that you should take. And although you're buying something initially for your, as you call them, little prince or princess to go and live in, we see a lot of people that are also considering more longer term, and actually it's an investment as well. Although you're not going to rent it out initially, you probably will. After,
you never know.
It might be that they stay in London, in which case, is it good proximity to sort of major employment hubs?
Yes.
If your son and daughter is working in finance, the likelihood is that they will be wanting to go to Canary Wharf, or actually increasingly more likely the City of London, the main CBD. But also, if they don't stay in London after their studies, will this work well as a rental investment as well? So I think as long as it ticks all the boxes for the kid in terms of convenience, location and safety and on-site amenities, it should work well as an investment, a rental investment thereafter as well.
There are many instances where the Malaysian parents would want or prefer to find something that is within walking distance to the university. But then my next question for them is usually whether there is any possibility for the kids to stay back and work.
Sure. I mean, I see increasingly now, when people are inquiring about, buying something from us, is there's multiple use cases now.
Yes.
It's no longer, I'm just buying for investment, or I'm just buying for my kids.
It's no longer that scenario.
A lot of people are looking at multiple use cases in the sense that, well, I'll buy it and then I might rent it out initially, but then one day my kids might live in it at university.
Yes, exactly.
Or, I might go and live in it. I might use it, I mean, I even have some people inquiring about their kids going to university, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, how old's your kid? And they'll say 10. And I'm like, what? Your kid is not going to university anytime soon.
Unless they're genius.
But they are thinking that far ahead.
Yeah.
And obviously that will become a rental investment in the short term.
Yes.
And then, they don't know their kids are going to go to university in London when they're 18, but they're just buying it now to lock in the price now.
It's security, yes.
As opposed to, waiting 8 years when prices will, be at a higher level.
That's right.
And so, there really is more than one use case, I think.
It does. I mean, even the recent 2 years after we started RBC, I would imagine around 60 or 70% of our new buyers meaning they are not existing buyers. They are probably that sort of investor. They do a lot of research before they have a chat with us, or they were being told by their friends that, you should explore UK market because of whatever reason. Then they came to us for definitely for a free consultation first. So we will always ask a few questions, and we just found that, wow, these people are actually fairly young. They're young parents. They are in their early 40s. The kids were probably less than 10 years old. But they are now all doing pre-planning because they know that time is money. Okay, time is money. Number one, the capital value in the UK market is very, very strong in a sense that it has that sort of good room for appreciation. And that will stay on especially for the next 2 decades, I would say. Irregardless whatever economic situation we're in, and nobody actually predicted we have a COVID, right? And we also didn't predict that we have a UK and the Russian Ukraine war. So all these things were variables that we couldn't foresee, but they know and they take note, and they want to jump into the market as early as possible, especially whenever their financial capacity allows.
I mean, you're right. They are variables that no one could foresee.
Yeah.
But, how has that affected the London market? It's gone up.
It's gone up.
It's one of the safest sort of places. I mean, historically, there will be cases where people have bought a property in London, 5-10 years in advance of their kids being old enough to be going to university. And actually, the amount that property has increased by has paid for their kids to go to university.
Exactly. And they can do their maths fairly easily, especially the clients who are from financial background. They can do a much better calculation than me. I mean, they just tuk on the calculator, right? And I was like, They would just do the forecast, the fee projections after 10 years when it comes to tuition fee, and I got the shock of my life. And I say, I'm glad that you start your planning now, because again, I know about the net present value of the money because I study valuation as well. So I also calculated under my valuation method, and I found that our money after 20 years is very, very, very small, unfortunately. So I think Malaysian parents, especially the era or the age group in between early 40s to 50s, they all have the same kind of motivations and also awareness that I can't wait anymore. My kids' education is everything for me. And if I can, I would love to send them out to the UK and study. So we had that sort of demand and also the trend coming from Malaysian parents the past 2 years, and I would say that it has been increasing over the years. And usually when we have like 2 sessions of consultation with them, we pretty much can nail down the projects, and they will just invest straight away. And money usually will be all discussed and sorted before they put down the booking fees. Money in the sense that they will also need to speak to a broker, a mortgage broker, to understand their financial capacity. Once that is being ascertained, then pretty much they are all set to go. So that is our experience in this line of work.
Correct, and it's so easy these days as well. You mentioned mortgage brokers. There's UK mortgage brokers that are based in in Asia.
Yeah.
They're in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong. It's people have been buying UK property now for decades overseas, and everyone you need contract-wise is available to you, and probably in your time zone as well.
Yes. So we do have the line of credit available from Malaysian banks, subject to the locations they are financing. But we also have recommendations from or contacts from mortgage brokers, and they are UK. They're all UK brokers, but some of them are actually based in Singapore. So they are able to speak to us or to you within the same time zone. So now question number 2, we know that you have lived in Wembley before for quite a few years. So tell us why you have picked to live in Wembley and what draws you.
Well, we were talking about how it's normal to commute in London. And actually at the time, I was going to the University of Westminster, which is actually really convenient to get to from Wembley. But actually, during my final year of university, I started working for, at the beginning of my career, for a developer called Quintain, who is still very much a big player in Wembley because they're the majority landowner. The place
that you rented was a student accommodation, or you just privately rented?
So I rented a student. I was in a student accommodation for my first year, which was on campus.
Right.
And then it was second year onwards. Me and then some friends, we had a 4-bedroom apartment actually and shared it, and it was in Wembley. And that's because it was easy to get to university. And there's a lot going on in that area. But I started working for Quintain, who has been regenerating that whole area. And so once I graduated from university, my job with them went full time. They're a property developer. And so my commute was about 2 minutes walk.
Oh my God. 2 minutes.
So I stayed there. One, because I could see it developing into a really cool place, and it was quick to get into London. But secondly, my commute was basically non-existent.
Exactly.
Which is always nice.
Which is always so ridiculously convenient.
So I probably had the shortest commute in London. But yeah, that kept me there for many years actually. And I stayed there from from my university years all the way up until 2018, which is when I moved to Hong Kong. So I was there for sort of 6 years.
And what sort of lifestyle will you be able to enjoy during your time in Wembley? Because I think that that's the point where the area was still going through quite a fair bit of transformation.
Correct. I mean, I really like it because it's got such a personality. I mean, if you compare that to other similar price locations, maybe in zones 3 or zone 4, the stadium is what gives it its personality, right? It's such an iconic stadium.
Did you get a free concert?
So
in a way, you can hear from where you stay.
Well, so you do, yeah. So I had a terrace. I was very lucky to have a duplex penthouse, and there was a terrace on the roof, and yes, it's an open air stadium. So if you opened the door and you sat on the terrace, you would hear the concert, which was great. So you didn't have to get tickets.
Any penny.
But also, if you live in the area, I think you get discount tickets anyway. For events, which was great. I used to love having to go to, going to a football game or going to a concert, and actually, you leave about sort of 5 minutes before the start of the concert, and you
so
rock
ridiculous,
up,
God.
and you sort of take your seat. It's great. And you're not in the crowds of people trying to get home on the train.
You're not rushing to take the train to get into the stadium.
Absolutely. But no, it's what gives that area its personality. It is a landmark, and I always found living next to it, pretty cool.
Yeah. It does. It does have that sort of brand association.
And I, that's what it draws people.
Is that how generally the British or the local would see Wembley this way? They think living nearby an iconic area is a feel-good value.
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess everyone's got their own opinion. There'll be some people that probably would hate it.
Okay.
I loved it. And there's thousands of people living there now, and they wouldn't live there if they didn't, love it as an area. I mean, it's even better now. just remember when I was there, I moved there in 2012. It was, there wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah,
there wasn't a lot on your doorstep.
Yeah.
We joke that actually when I started working for Quintain around about that time, the only lunch option I really had was a Tesco supermarket, sandwich and a packet of crisps.
Okay, the sandwiches were not too bad.
But now, I mean,
they've got everything like
so
Box
many
Park.
restaurants.
They have a huge food court in it.
Box Park is there. Box Park, for those who don't know, is a huge sort of almost warehousey like venue, and then round the outside there's lots of different
cargo
street food
containers
vendors.
style.
There's like a bar in the middle, and it's all sort of communal seating. And I've been there now, but I just missed it. It opened as I left, unfortunately.
No.
But that really did put.
But you went back this year, so
I go back at least twice. I have been there now, but I missed that. But every time I've been, it's packed. I mean, it's so popular. It really did put Wembley on the map, I think, with a lot of people.
So even during the normal days, without a football match or concerts or any entertainment events in the area, how was the crowd like during the normal days when you were still there?
Like anywhere else in London, I suppose. I mean, there's a lot of people working in the area now. So, you've got that normal sort of work traffic. The local council, the local borough is based there as well. So there's a lot of employees in that building. You've got something called the London Designer Outlet Shopping Centre, which is actually 10 years old now, opened in 2013. So just after I moved there.
So those items are really outlet pricing, I suppose.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's often compared to Bicester Village. Now, it's not the same in the sense that Bicester Village, for those who know, is outside of London and is I would say more high-end brands. Your luxury brands are at Bicester Village. The London Designer Outlet is more high street brands, lots of sports shops. I mean, I've not been there for a while, but they still had things like there was like a Tommy Hilfiger and there was a Jack Wills and sort of brands like that. But yes, they were outlet prices.
Right. Okay.
So it's people go there. It's really popular. But also there's restaurants in there. There's everyone's favorite Nando's, which
What, Nando's?
in the UK?
No way.
In the UK is a religion. I mean, it's amazing. It's one of my go-to.
That's new to me. Nando's.
I have to go for a Nando's every time I go back to the UK.
Why?
Because I think you have it here in Malaysia.
We have it here.
But I don't think it's that good here.
Really?
Yeah, but
I feel insulted.
but in the UK, it's amazing. And every time I go back to visit, it's one of those things I have to go and do is get a Nando's. But anyway, there's a Nando's, there's a cinema, there's lots going on there. So
Nando's, oh my God, I learned new thing today. I would have thought that the national food in the UK is curry.
Oh, that as well, obviously.
It's the Indian curry.
When I go back, I have a list of food that living in Hong Kong I miss. And yes, curry is one of them. Chicken tikka masala.
Oh yes.
The British favourite.
Oh my God, so good.
And Nando's, and then other things that I won't bore you with.
If you have not been to London, or rather you have been there but you have never tried the Indian food in London, please give yourself a good treat when you're there. Go into any Indian restaurants at Brick Lane, or even go to Southall, or any Indian operated restaurants. You will not disappointed because the curry is so bloody good. I mean, excuse my language, it's very good.
It is. It's exceptional. If you want a recommendation, then I'm sure I have a few.
I think we are able to list it down in our podcast description, no problem. But that's on for another episode on National Food
actually,
UK.
while we're on the subject of Wembley, I've never been to it, but actually an Indian restaurant that has a Michelin star has opened in Wembley now.
Oh my God, guys!
That's
please book
now.
your ticket now. Don't wait no more.
I'll go when I'm back at Christmas and let you know how it is.
Please, yes, do. Yes. I was supposed to fly in on Christmas as well, but there was a change of plan. Please let me know your feedback. I will definitely drop in. Okay.
I feel like Indian curry probably shouldn't be Michelin star, you know what I mean? But I think it's more fine dining Indian food. But I'm sure it's amazing.
But the ingredient to make good curry is very complicated. It's very complicated. I'm sure all of us can relate because we are Malaysians and we love curry, right? We have Chinese curry also, we have Indian curry, we have Malay curry. And every race would have their own ingredient. But I think one thing we cannot get away is the coconut milk, right? Or the santan. So without santan, that is not curry. So Japanese curry, sorry it's not curry. Okay, it's enough curry.
You're making me very hungry, and also this feels like it's turned into a food
it's
podcast.
It's almost lunch. It's property podcast. Oh my God, let's just be focused. Question number 3. What do you think? Oh my God! Now we are talking about ingredients. Really, the question is, what do you think they are the good ingredients to make a wise property investment in London today, with all things considered, coming from, especially from a first-time investor, perhaps?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say good ingredients to make a good curry.
I know, like good curry.
So ingredients for a good property
tikka.
investment. So I generally come from the perspective that, wherever you invest in London, London is one of the safest, if not the safest and most secure property markets in the world. So in a lot of ways, you can't go wrong. That being said, I do think that not all developments or property opportunities in London are created equally. You know, there are some that are better than others, I think. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is, I see a lot of new developments that are sort of almost exclusively being sold internationally, with very, very little interest from locals. And I almost think that's probably a bit of a recipe for disaster. Lots of food and allergies coming up. Sorry.
We are obviously very hungry.
I'm very hungry now. I don't want to name any, developments or anything like that, but I think it's something to sort of be interested in and look at is there demand here from locals? Because ultimately, if you're buying for an investment, that's who you're going to rent it to.
Yeah.
And secondly, what's your exit strategy? If you want to sell that property in 5 years, in 10 years, it would be ideal, really, if there was interest in that development or that area amongst locals, because they're ultimately probably the ones that you're going to sell it to. So if it was me personally with my own money, I like developments that have a mixture of interest from both international markets, but also local people. And also, sometimes, we've discussed this before, but generally locals don't buy until closer to completion.
That's correct.
So if something's being sold 2 or 3 years in advance, and it's being sold predominantly overseas, that doesn't necessarily mean there won't be interest from locals as you get closer to completion.
I think this culture is also because it stems from the mortgage or financing point of view, because the financier in the UK will only consider giving a mortgage offer 6 months before completion. So even if the buyers from the local market will want to book something off the plan, but they cannot be able to ascertain their financing, or even when it comes to locking in a mortgage offer on the spot, because the mortgage or the lenders are not able to do valuation of the property. I
mean, I guess in a way, the higher the popularity amongst domestic buyers in the UK, that the better the investment, I suppose, in a way. I do see a lot of people internationally buying stuff that I personally think is overpriced, and I think a local wouldn't go anywhere near. Because
we have seen examples like that.
From a British perspective, you look at some stuff and you go, how much?
You'd be like, what?
Like what? Like no one locally in London would ever pay that price. But internationally, you don't come at it from the same perspective, right? So I think a mixture of interest from both international markets and domestic buyers is a good thing to look at.
Yes, I think a common perception or misperception from our clients is that when they come to us and look at a specific project, and they will always think that, why you promote in KL? It's a very typical question, and with a very typical Malaysian accent. Why why always sell in KL? Why this project cannot sell in British? Is it cannot sell in UK? Cannot sell in London? Is it? Then I'm like, oh no, let me explain. I think that's a very common misperception, because they think that there's only when developers struggle to sell in the UK market, then only they will bring the project overseas in order to get the sales.
Also bear in mind that I think, because local buyers don't buy closer to completion, it's important for a developer, particularly if it's a big scheme, to sort of, to get some early sales. And that is more likely to come from overseas, initially. I mean, I often think that a lot of UK people miss out on some of the best units because they don't buy far enough in advance of completion. I mean, it's interesting. That's not always the case. I mean, we have a couple of developments that are selling off plan, which is unusual. But they're they're areas with clear local demand.
Yes.
And so I like that there's a mixture. I don't want to sell developments in London exclusively overseas. I want there to be a mix.
Under
that's the right
Regal
thing to
portfolio, there is this specific local, or actually tool that we have helped you guys to promote in Malaysia is one being in Watford.
Yes,
very
correct.
local, but it's not a popular name among Malaysians. But there's another one in London Fields, not very popular, but I think some Malaysians are starting to explore the areas in the East End, like in Bethnal Green, in London Fields, Hackney, because all these areas were predominantly not so good area back in 10, 20 years back. It was, I wouldn't say it was a rough area, but some pocket of lands were quite rough, but I think it's now all going through a huge regeneration coming from the council and the government. So the areas in London Fields, for example, actually does have that sort of characters or personality that I can relate to Bangsa in Malaysia, because that is quite a neighborhood that we all aspire to live in or buy property in. Not so on Damansara High, I think it's pretty much towards there, because the people who live or reside in London Fields are cool kids. That's my own definition.
I've always said actually that that if I was to move back to London tomorrow, which I'm very happy in Hong Kong, I'm not going to, but if I did, London Fields would be up there as an area that I would personally like to live in. Now, I'm probably not cool enough to live in London Fields because it is a very, very trendy area. It's a very trendy area.
Yeah, measure up.
But actually,
get some tattoos and
beard, little round glasses,
I'm
tattoos.
going to do some hot yoga.
Absolutely, very, very hipster. But it's a gem of an area in East London, and it's a perfect example of an area that internationally is not very well known.
Yeah.
And 90%, maybe more, of sales in that development, and by the way, it doesn't complete till March, so these have been happening off plan, have been to locals. They've been to local owner-occupiers. And actually to have a percentage that high is rare.
Okay, give us the percentage of the local buyers versus international buyers. In that particular,
well, genuinely, I think over all the sales so far, and there's still some left, by the way. But
I'll give you the availability later.
But it overwhelmingly local. Yeah, I mean, of the sales, I don't have the exact figures, but of the sales done so far,
they're all
90%
off-plan
plus.
purchase.
Correct,
They're fine with.
It's such a popular area domestically. It's zone 2. There's an overground station that goes to Liverpool Street in 3 stops, 9 minutes. So Liverpool Street being the heart of the city, the main CBD area. So you're super close to work. But that area itself, it's that classic sort of, regenerated East London area where there's, independent bakeries and coffee shops. There's now a Michelin star restaurant round the side of the building. That we're in. It's a low density area. The building goes up to I think 7 stories. It's boutique. There's only 57 units in there. I like a boutique development generally, and Regal are very good at doing these. We'll have the big, Wembley sort of regeneration projects, which are sort of 800 plus units, and they're great. They're great. There's great facilities and everything in them. I like the boutique ones because there's a scarcity to them.
Correct.
So when you want to resell, when you want to rent your property, you're not competing with hundreds, sometimes thousands of identical properties, in that market. So I really like those boutique units. Based on how many are selling domestically, I often say to people, just generically with some developments, if you buy this, you'll have a tenant within a few days. Like, it's really popular. You'll rent it really quickly. I genuinely think with this London Fields development of ours, you'll have a tenant within an hour of it going on the market.
Yeah, I've no doubt, because we just recently had a very successful and epic case of completion. Number one, the completion was done fairly quickly. Then our agent jumped on, the advertise to sort of promote the unit for letting, and I think in a day, the listing on the portal generated at least 38 inquiries in a day, guys, in a day. And subsequently, on the next day itself, there were 4 viewings. But, the first viewing, I think the guy he wanted to reduce the rate down, but my agent said no. So on the second viewing, it sort of went through, but they still move on to the third and the fourth viewing with different clients. And they all agreed to take the second one because she was able to top up at least 10% on the rental. So guys, completion was yesterday, okay? Just put into context, was yesterday. Then today, you get 4 viewings and then you get the rental offer agreed on the second day. And then it takes another 3 days to prepare the paperwork and then they move in on the 5th day. As simple as that.
Yeah.
That is London rental market. Well, I don't want to stare down on our Malaysian rental market because that's not the case. But it's a huge and vast difference in terms of the lead time, getting a tenant in, and then I am a property owner in Malaysia as well, but I don't really. We don't really have one exclusive agent. Put it this way, we have many agents promoting the unit altogether. So that also create competition, but there's not much of the quality control, I would say. So I eventually took the initiative and say, I'm going to do the tenant screening myself.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, because the Malaysian agents are a bit different. I think they just want to move fast.
Yeah.
You say, agree, okay, no problem. We do the paperwork without going through any background references.
I mean, in most cases, letting agents in London, and I've been one at the start of my career, was, are really good and take all the hassle away from an overseas, buyer screening tenants and everything. Yeah. There's always, in these markets, ones that are no good.
Yeah.
But, I recommend many agents to people, all the time, and they do a great job. And it's a very hands-off investment.
Very hands-on.
You can just enjoy the rent coming in every month.
For me, it's hands-on here for my Malaysian property, but it's very hands-off when I manage my properties in London, in Australia, because my agents can literally cover every scope of work. So I'm very happy with them. I'm not staring down on any Malaysian agent, but I think there's a cultural differences and the practice differences as well. So
I think the challenge in London is when you have something where there's thousands of identical units and everyone's trying to fight for the tenants and everyone's undercutting each other on price. That's generally a scenario I would probably rather avoid. You can get £50 a month more in rent, but if your property is vacant for 2 or 3 months before you get that, then it's written off any gain in rent that you've made. So you just kind of want a tenant from day one. So sometimes with new buildings, because in the short term, a lot of properties come onto the market at one time, it can take a while to find a tenant. And it's another reason why I quite like these boutique developments where there's clear local demand already. London Fields is certainly one of those areas. Most of those units in our development won't come on the rental market because they're mostly being bought by local owner-occupiers. They're going to occupy it themselves. So there'll be very, very small number of units available, for rental. So I like that as an area and as a development.
And also just to give you a bit of a comparison, why I personally like London Fields, because if you are familiar with, let's say, international property market landscape, and if you are familiar with Melbourne, and I used to study in Melbourne, it does remind me of the characteristic that one of the areas that I really love in Melbourne, which is called Fitzroy. It's very, very Fitzroy feel. The vibe, the people, the type of shops, the lifestyle, the atmosphere, and think generally everyone in the neighborhood knows everyone. So there's a very close-knit community itself. So when I was in London Fields doing some site visit and I went to the development, the laundry under Regal, I say that is pretty Aussie. And in fact, there's a lot of Aussies and Kiwi living in London Fields because they can actually relate to their lifestyle back home in Australia and in New Zealand. So guys, if you are looking at something that has, or the area that has very strong local influence, and you want to be close to Liverpool Street, for example, because that's basically the major employment hub in London, then this project is something that you should seriously consider. So you can reach out to us if you need more information. So last but not least, final questions. Have we overshoot? No, not yet. So, yay. Would you recommend investing in Wembley and why? Oh, coming back to Wembley. Yes.
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm going to say yes.
Of course, you're going to say yes. Your boss is listening.
Well, it's an area where I think the property price in Wembley is much more affordable for a lot more people. So, yes, there's a lot of units, there, but actually more people can afford them. There's clear local demand. It's already established as an area. I think sometimes some of these regeneration projects in London, if you buy early on, the area hasn't actually matured yet. Maybe there's a promise of a future, tube line going there, but it doesn't exist yet. And so no one wants to live there yet. So, Wembley's very established. You'll easily get a tenant, very early on if you're buying for an investment. Just on Wembley, I mentioned Quintain previously, who was the company I used to work for and is the company who are regenerating that whole area.
Yep.
They are building a lot of residential developments as well, but crucially, they are built to rent only. Yep. So you can't buy in any of the developments that they're building at the moment. It's a rental product
the rental
only.
rate they are charging is usually higher than market
Correct,
rate.
yeah. So from an investor's perspective in Wembley, on the face of it, you're arriving in Wembley and there's all these new buildings and it's like this mini metropolis and it's amazing. But I don't have the exact figures again, but maybe 70-80% of the units that you see there are rental only. You can't buy in them. So from a capital appreciation perspective, the properties that you can actually buy are in the minority in Wembley. Yeah. So there's clear demand because there's thousands of people living there. And, people don't want to rent forever. People have an aspiration, particularly in the UK. It's in our DNA to be a homeowner. So that will, I think, help the actual sales price. But then coming on to the rental price, on the face of it, yes, there's lots of rental competition. But actually what Quintain do is because they are the major landlord in that area, they really set the rental price. They set the benchmark.
They set the benchmark.
You don't have loads and loads, thousands of individual landlords all sort of undercutting each other. You've got Quintain who set the price and they don't negotiate on their prices.
That was harsh.
And basically the local sort of individual landlords in the area piggyback off that high benchmark that's being set. So it's kind of unique as an area in terms of it's got such a large build to rent portfolio. And they're not just building residential blocks, they're building parks and the shopping centre and restaurants and stuff. So there's a lot they're doing aside from their residential developments. But
and the PRS scheme they are running, they usually would throw in the furniture and, the units will all look identical in that sense?
I mean, they differ from building to building. They generally package everything up so that bills are included and stuff like that. So the headline rental is significantly more because there's a lot of things included in that. But, not everybody wants to have everything packaged up. Some people would rather shop around for their electricity provider, and get the best deal. So it suits some people, it doesn't suit others. Another thing with our Wembley development is because on the face of it, there is a lot of, apartments in that area, albeit it's in a much more affordable area for Londoners. Our development is set apart from those because of the amenities within it. So it's the only building in Wembley with a pool. We have a golf simulator. Some people ask me if that can be turned into a karaoke room, but I don't know.
Why not? So you can sing your Chinese song in that particular karaoke lounge.
Gym, yoga studio, games room, cinema. So it's really packed with amenities in there. And I think that's what will help it sort of stand out. But there's already a really strong rental market in Wembley. And this is going to be a great addition to an area that's already just transformed.
I think it's pretty much we have covered everything. So before we wrap up, we can provide all the information on all the projects that we had discussed in this podcast. We have Wembley project. We also have the London Fields project. So reach out to us. We will leave our contact details in the description. Give us a text, give us even an email or call. We will attend to your inquiry. I think last but not least, we are pretty much done with 4 questions in more than half an hour. Okay.
We're not very good at keeping within our time limit,
We're not very time conscious because we can talk so much and can talk all day.
We talked about food too much.
The curry and the Nando's. I'm going to take Nando's today.
It's definitely lunchtime.
Definitely lunchtime. So if you like what you see, if you like what you listen, please don't forget to subscribe our YouTube channel and also on Spotify. I'm Shelvin and this is Matt from Regal London. I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shelvin. Thank you.